following scripture quotations are taken from the Holy Bible, New Living Translation, with copyright by Tyndale House Foundation, used by permission of Tyndale House Publishers, all rights reserved. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Peachy Pie, that's not my real name, and this is a mini applause for you. Why do you get a mini applause? Because you're amazing and because you made it here. And whatever you're going through, you made it here, you are here right now. Thank you so much, and that's what makes you amazing. That despite whatever you're going through yesterday and today, you made it here. And since you made it here today, I'm pretty sure, because I have faith in you, you're going to make it through tomorrow. So why don't you just hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you can be here tomorrow when I post another video. Anyway, thanks for joining me. Today, my topic is actually about hate. We're going to talk a little bit about hate. And so, if you do not like the topic that we're going to talk about, which is going to include racism, sexism, abuse of the elderly, abuse of disabled people, abuse of minority groups in general, then you are welcome to pop off this video at any time. Thank you so much for being here. I do make other content that is not abuse related, but you can retreat to the entirety of YouTube if you want to. But thank you so much for being here. Anyway, let's get moving on. Yeah. So thanks to Paint by Number for allowing me to play the game. Paint by Number actually has really beautiful images. It was my first experience with a coloring in game on mobile, and it is phenomenal. I absolutely love it. And they have all different types of images, and I enjoy the blend ones or the special images, which you'll see me painting, like doing paintings today, right? And I find it really relaxing. So it's a good way to just calm down and space out a bit if you have depression and or anxiety. And I highly recommend it. So thanks again to the developers for letting me play the game. So what is a minority group? An article from Lumen Learning states that according to Charles Wagley and Marvin Harris from 1958, a minority group is distinguished by 5 characteristics. 1. Unequal treatment and less power over their lives. 2. Distinguishing physical or cultural traits like skin color or language. 3. Involuntary membership in this particular group. 4. Awareness of subordination. And 5. A high rate of in-group marriage. Additional examples of minority groups might include the LGBT community, religious practitioners whose faith is not widely practiced where they live, and people with disabilities. Scapegoat theory, developed initially from Dollard's 1939 frustration aggression theory, suggests that the dominant group will displace its unfocused aggression onto the subordinate group. History has shown us many examples of the scapegoating of a subordinate group. An example from the last century is the way that Adolf Hitler was able to blame the Jewish population for Germany's social and economic problems. In the United States, recent immigrants have frequently been the scapegoat for the nation's or individuals' woes. Many states have enacted laws to disenfranchise immigrants. These laws are popular because they let the dominant group scapegoat the subordinate group. So, 10 examples of the most abused minority groups that I could pick out off the top of my head in no particular order would be, number 1 would be immigrants who face xenophobia and Asian hate as well. Second group would be women. Third, LGBTQ plus community. 4, people of color, including mixed race or colored African American people, Hispanics, etc. 5 would be low income individuals or low income households. 6 would be the elderly. 7, disabled peoples. 8 would be retail and other low paying jobs, right? 9 are sex workers, and 10 are religious people. There's a lot of oppression in religious circles, in case you didn't know. Well, if you didn't know, hi, welcome to my channel. Anyway, so the following excerpts may have been paraphrased due to copyright infringement and fair use issues. Number 1, xenophobia. A story from the Maverick Citizen tells of a man whose parents were from Mozambique, but he was born in South Africa. His parents owned a few stands they were renting out, but after they passed away, he inherited the shacks and relied on them for income while he worked in a store repairing radios and TVs. One day he returned from work to find a crowd of people who were attacking foreigners in the area and trying to force them to leave the country. They came to search for him, but since his stands were locked and they didn't know his identity, he managed to slip by under the radar until a woman in the community pointed him out, forcing him to run for his life. He had to spend that night at the police station for safety. And when he returned, his stalls had been razed and looted. He'd lost everything. They had stolen his belongings, then taken his zinc sheets too. Thereafter, in the community, people organized themselves into a gang-type faction. They wore certain colors, and if you do not wear those colors or greet them with a specific greeting, you'd be attacked for being a foreigner. He admits that he thought of returning home, but at the time of the interview, his South African-born girlfriend was pregnant with their baby, and he felt like he could not abandon her. During the attacks, she too was thrown out of their shack for dating a foreigner. He remembers the story of a fortunate young boy who had been a foreigner. On his way home from school, the child encountered a group of xenophobes who were waiting to attack foreigners. A Zulu woman threw herself on top of the boy to stop the group from harming him. Because of her interference, the boy's life was saved. Another man told him that his girlfriend had been evicted from their shack. The group of xenophobes wanted to kill their 9-month-old baby, but she cried until the group finally allowed them to leave. The man admits that he was alarmed to discover that the crowd of people who attacked them were people that they knew. He also says the police did nothing to prevent a foreigner from being set alight. A statistics from NBC News America indicates that according to FBI statistics, anti-Asian hate crimes rose as much as 73% in the US last year, due in part to the assumption that the Chinese government is responsible for the pandemic. Number 2, women. We face sexism on a daily basis, along with gender role issues, among other things like gender-based violence. Number 3, the LGBTQ community. According to statistics, 50% of school-aged LGBT plus students have heard homophobic slurs frequently or often. Almost 2/3 of LGBT plus people experience violence or abuse. 1 in 5 LGBT plus people will be the target of harassment because of their sexual orientation. 11% of LGBT plus people have encountered domestic abuse in their relationships in the last year. Number 4, people of color. They face racism and discrimination all the time. The history of South Africa is apartheid. Those feelings of anger and hatred didn't just go away with the end of apartheid. Racism is still alive and well here. Sorry to let you know that. Anyway, number 5, the poor or low-income households. An excerpt from a paper by the Oxford University Press states that the shame and stigma experienced by people in poverty leads to social exclusion, limited social capital, low self-worth, and a lack of agency that could serve to prolong poverty. It also says, whereas shame purports to enhance social cohesion, stigma is inherently divisive and usually accompanied by negative discrimination, causing individual pain, but little, if any, collective benefit. So people from poor or low-income households are often mistreated because of their situation, and often they are looked down upon as if they are responsible for their financial situation. Meanwhile, there are other reasons. Yeah. So number 6 and 7, which are rather similar in terms of the type of abuses they suffer, would be abuse of the elderly and abuse of disabled people, which include physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, confinement or restrainment, passive neglect, especially by the caregiver, willful deprivation, like withholding needed things like medical care, food or shelter, etc., and financial abuse, which is essentially theft. Though as many as possibly around 5 million elderly people in the USA are abused each year, only 1 in 24 persons will report the abuse. Number 7, retail and other low-paying jobs. There have been several cases in the news lately about restaurant and retail workers being physically abused. I don't know if you've noticed them, but they are absolutely heartbreaking and really disgusting. Personally, I consider low wages also financial abuse. Employees in these industries also have a tendency to be overworked and often face sexual abuse and aren't allowed to do anything or say anything about it. Sex workers is the next one. BCM International Health and Human Rights reported the following on female sex workers in Brazil. Regarding human rights violations, approximately 15% were required to give part of the earnings to owners of workplace establishments. 38% started sex work under 18 years old, and 6% were required to periodically present the HIV test results. 21.3% reported having faced discrimination in health services, and 24.3% always disclosed the female sex worker status. So sex workers are always being degraded. Meanwhile, they should be protected because there are reasons why they went into the industry, and irrespective of what those reasons are, they are still vulnerable to abuse and harassment. Now, religious abuse, right? WebMD identifies spiritual abuse as any attempt to exert power and control over someone using religion, faith, or beliefs can be spiritual abuse. The spiritual abuse can happen within a religious organization or in a personal relationship. So we've discussed a whole bunch of different areas in which there are people in minorities in which they are being abused or perhaps being abusive. So my question really, right, is why do we hate? And I've come up with a list of things that I was thinking about that may be connected to why we hate. The first thing that I could think of is that tolerance is low. We have a tendency to have it's my way or the highway mentality. And this is going to tie in with a point that's going to come later on, right? But number two, we are increasingly isolating ourselves, and algorithms encourage this. Algorithms on your YouTube channel, their purpose is to keep you on the platform as long as possible. So what's happening is that with an algorithm, if you watch something, it will recommend that content to you to see if it can keep you on the platform. If you ignore that content or dislike that content, the algorithm won't send that content your way. So you're isolating yourself, which leads to point number three. We're not exposed enough to dissenting voices, so we don't know how to respond to people when we disagree. Like I said, the algorithm is recommending you things that you want to see all the time. And what happens is that we get so used to not having to deal with people and events or issues that we disagree with that we become kind of far removed from it, right? And then number four is that we hurt and we don't want to be hurt again. That's just logical. And number five is that we're entitled. For example, if we don't see it, it's not my problem kind of mentality that a lot of us have. Number six is that we lack compassion, and it's possibly because we haven't received compassion somewhere. I like to believe that compassion breeds compassion, but it has to start somewhere, right? And number seven could be we just simply don't know how to give compassion in this day and age. So we need to work on kindness, right? And then number eight would be we don't know how to forgive. I'm not saying that people should walk over you and you should let them. I'm saying that if you forgive them, you should still learn your lesson, because once you put a boundary in place, then they will know that they're not allowed to cross that boundary, and that's where they will be able to stop that kind of behavior. So yeah, so that's really just talking about how the tolerance is low, my way or the highway. So we don't forgive if we don't have things going our way. If someone else doesn't apologize to us for offending us by having a different opinion or a different way to live, a different choice, then we are extremely offended and we shut them off, or we kick them out, or we isolate ourselves and get rid of them. So all of these things, I believe, contribute to hate in society, and it's one of the reasons why I think that domestic abuse or any other sort of abuse that we've discussed so far can slide under the radar, because we are not even understanding how low our tolerance is for other people. Anyway, our scripture of the day is from Luke 2 verse 43 to 44, which says, after the celebration was over, they started home to Nazareth, but Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents didn't miss him at first because they assumed he was among the other travelers. But when he didn't show up that evening, they started looking for him among their relatives and friends. I know this is a very strange scripture of the day, but I like to think that it means that we should be so in the presence of God that when people are looking for us, the first place that they think to look is, oh, let me check if this person's in their prayer time. Let me check if this person is, let me check where they are at, or are they in their worship session or whatever it is. But we should try and be in the presence of God more often. And that's what I think that God's trying to say for today. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Please drop a candle in support of abuse victims if you know an abuse victim and reformed abusers. And please support Team C's and other domestic violence organizations. My links are in the description, and thank you so very much for joining me. Have a phenomenal day further. Bye.